3, 11k, goes for lethal, and this is game. This is game. No, we're seeing a heal. Hey yo, how's it going everyone? Entropy here today with another video. Today we're going to be doing a deck profile on the new Clan Event Edition Murakumo Wave 2. Of course, with Wave 2, during the Break Ride era, we're getting Break Ride support, and we're also getting some reverse stuff. So, a lot of kind of fun stuff, of course, with Murakumo. You have a lot of weird, interesting interactions that we can go over, and I'm pretty confident with this list. I've been playing quite a bit around with it, and I've been having a lot of fun. So I guess without further ado, let's go straight into it. Starting with, of course, the grade 3s. I think this is the name of the deck, HYAKKI Vogue. Reverse, Vanguard Circle, Limit Break 4, Counterblast 2, lock 2 of your rear guards. Have 3 of your HYAKKI Vogues, give the 3 of your HYAKKI Vogues the ability to attack from the back row, and they also get plus 10k until end of turn. One thing to note is that you can target itself, you know, in the Vanguard Circle, it can get the plus 10k. So that's pretty neat. In addition, when placed, Counterblast 1 to call a HYAKKI Vogue from outside of your deck, and at the end of the turn, return that unit to your hand. So this way, even if you miss the Break Ride, you can still get a copy, and you can still do your attack from back row kind of stuff. You know, of course, it's not as effective, but it is an option, and of course, SPs look nice. Next up, we have Covert Demonic Dragon Kagura Bloom. So this is your ideal first ride target. This is your Break Ride. When you Break Ride, Counterblast 1 to have your Vanguard get a plus 10. Call 2 cards with the same card name as your Vanguard from outside your deck, and they get boost. And at the end of that turn, return those units to your hand. So this way, you can, like, you know, if that's HYAKKI Vogue, for example, you get to get copies of it. You get to use them to attack or boost. At the end of the turn, they go back to your hand, so then you can use them for the next turn safely as well if you have a next turn, of course. Then, when it's boosted, it gets plus 3k. So, 14k attacker sometimes. With ample boost, it can hit those 16k, 18k numbers. That's necessary. Your backup grade 3 is Shirayuki. Shirayuki is a great unit. Vanguard Circle, Limit Break 4, when this is attacked, Counterblast 1 Persona Blast to have the attacking unit get minus 20k until end of battle. Very defensive. In addition, on place, you can Counterblast 2 to call a copy of itself from outside the deck, and at the end of the turn, add this to your hand. So this is actually quite similar to HYAKKI Vogue. HYAKKI Vogue is very offensive. You know, you're getting more pieces, you're getting more attacks because you can attack from back row. Shirayuki is more defensive. You're getting copies of it itself as well. Put it to your hand, and then you can defend yourself by Persona Blasting and then reducing your opponent's attacking unit's power. So, depending on your situation, sometimes you want to Break Ride into HYAKKI Vogue, sometimes you want to Break Ride into Shirayuki. Of course, if you have extra copies of them in your hand already, then it's definitely very helpful, because then you need to commit less Counterblast to get more HYAKKI Vogues, or you can, you know, be more safer with Shirayuki. And last grade 3, this is really a tech spot. Stealth Dragon Void Gelga. Sometimes having that 10k with an on place, get a 10k booster, 20k column by itself is pretty solid. We're not playing 9 draws, so the 10k booster actually does help, because sometimes you're missing on your board presence. And yeah, so I think let's go jump back straight to the grade 1s actually. We're going to be playing for Metamorphox. Stealth Beast Metamorphox. So this card actually lets you enable 5 attacks organically without stand triggers. We do play stand triggers, but this card helps you organically reach that. Because how you set up your board is, for example, if you have Kagura Bloom, you Break Ride HYAKKI Vogue, now you have, what, 2 copies, you use the skill, you have 3 copies, and you're going to lock 2, right? You're going to lock 2. So this way you only have 4 attacks, right? 3 HYAKKI Vogues, and then your Vanguard HYAKKI Vogue. What Metamorphox does is that you can call this, unlock something, and this way you can actually have 5 attacks. Of course, you can't really have more than that, but I mean, I guess you can have more than that if you just call more Metamorphoxes. You can have up to 6, but generally speaking, you can get access to 5. I think 5 is pretty consistent, is what I'm getting. And you definitely have to play 4 of this. If you don't have 4, the deck doesn't really do as much. And if you want to play 9 draws, definitely you can. But you definitely need to rely more on the Metamorphoxes than usual. For PGs, this is the only PG that we have so far. This is the new PG, so this helps you with your Break Ride and stuff. We play 4 Oboro cards. This card lets you copy a rearguard with the same name. And we play 1 million rand. So million rand is nice as a one-off, I think, because if you call 1, you can just keep calling more and more and more to fill up your board. By itself, you can make up a 12k column, and then you can call another 6k booster. If you have all the counterblast in the world, you can make like, you know, 2 12k columns and then 1 6k booster if you want. Won't really recommend that because you want to save your counterblast for other stuff, but you can. Workcourt has some interesting interactions that we can mention later on. You're gonna notice that a lot of cards use a lot of counterblast, right? Like Hyakki Vogue uses a lot of counterblast. Kaguru Bloom, the Break Ride, uses a lot of counterblast. Shirayuki uses counterblast as well. So for white mains on hit on flipper, very, very important, right? I think that's enough said. 5-10Ks, pretty solid numbers, stand targets really. And we're playing 4 Caped Stealth Rogue Shanui. So this is a really unique unit. I don't think I've actually considered playing this until I actually tried playing this. Rearguard Circle, when this unit attack hits, you may return this unit to your hand. Doesn't save hitting Vanguard or Rearguard, so you can AK into something. This card I find actually quite useful because you really do want to soak up damage. Whether you're going into Kaguru Bloom, into Hyakki Vogue, or into Shirayuki, both really want that LB4 condition. So soaking up damage early is fine. If you're not comfortable with it, swap this out. But, you know, what this lets you do is it lets you hit, commit, but then, you know, you can still take the damage and you can still save this intercept for later on. If you interact this with Murakumo, for example, you know, you can copy it and then on hit, return that copy to your hand. You don't need to remove that unit at the end of that turn anymore because it's your hand. And so what you're effectively getting is an extra, you know, intercept. And this is really valuable because we're not playing 9 draws. So sometimes you might come up with some resource issues. You know, there is a reason why most decks plays 9 draws. But Murakumo and stuff like Million Rat and stuff like Void Gilga, you know, these units that makes copies of itself, synergizes well with some stuff here. And you do have finally unflippers to actually help you out with the counterblast cost. So it actually works out quite well overall. And lastly, of course, we're going to be playing the Kokenmaru, the grade 3 searcher. Of course, we have 3 ideal, you know, ride targets. Ideally, you're going to start with the break ride first, and then you're going to go to Hyakki Vogue or Shirayuki. Having extra copies of either Hyakki Vogue or Shirayuki doesn't hurt because you can always use them for their own skills purposes. You know, for Shirayuki, it's persona blasting. For Hyakki Vogue, it's extra attacking. It doesn't really hurt. And yeah, I think that's generally it. If you know you have the Kagura Bloom, if you don't really feel like you're going to be committing a lot on the sides earlier on, put the starter behind the Vanguard. Helps you hit 17k columns, especially if you're going second. Generally speaking, because you have lower stat lines for grade 1s, you do need the starter behind your Vanguard to actually hit. But other than that, because you are playing stand triggers, sometimes it is wise to put your starter to the sides. So if you're going first, generally speaking, I would put the starter on the corner. If I'm going second, I'm generally speaking putting the starter behind the Vanguard. So that's just how I play. Of course, if you have stuff like Shanui at the beginning, in your opening hand, and you want to be able to proc this off, and if you're going second, then you definitely need the boost to actually help you hit over those numbers. So of course, make it, you know, play smart. But all I can give you is a general kind of rule of thumb, and you really need to play depending on the scenario. And I guess that's basically it. Let's go straight into some games. I recorded some games that from last night. I think they're a pretty good showcase. I think it's pretty good. So let's go straight into the footage and see how this deck can perform. So for the first match, we're gonna be playing against OTT. So we have 2 games for today. I think both games are pretty good. And shows both the aggressive side of the deck and the defensive side. So Void Gilga, not really a key card you really want. It's just there sometimes as an option. But since you have the grade 3 searcher, I'm confident not keeping any grade 3s in your hand actually. And you see the Million Rat and the Oboro card. Which one would you ride? Generally speaking, I would ride the Million Rat. I don't think it's that valuable. And the white main definitely does help. Drawing both your key pieces, the Kagura Bloom and the Hyakki Vogue, which is really nice. Riding the Million Rat, putting the Kokenmaru behind the Vanguard because you need to hit the 10k numbers to hit over the 7k. One of the weaknesses of the deck is that your grade 1s, most of them, you know, other than the, like what? Most of them are 6k, and only like 4 cards in your grade 1 slot is 7k. So Generally speaking, if you're going second, the starter is going to be put behind your Vanguard just because you need to hit the numbers. The unflipper, the unlocker, generally speaking, you know, holding 1 is more than enough in your hand. So if you have 2, then ride that unit. Other than that, I think it's a pretty key card to actually have. So here they know they're gonna hit the crit. So nothing too special there. Maybe put to 3 early on, which is a bit rough, but we do draw into the Hyakki Vogue. It does suck to actually draw into your triggers, of course, but you know, Hyakki Vogue does synergize well with itself, so it's not that bad. I forgot to turn on the animation, so here you go. So we get to see our lovely Suisei ride animation. Of course, if you want to play Miko, you can go do that as well. And of course, she's cute today too. Starter, you don't really need to use it right now because you have all the grade 3s you need. Generally speaking, you only need 2, either the Break Ride and, you know, either Shirayuki or Hyakki Vogue. Here we can copy White Mane. The reason we do that is because we can actually make use of the stance. White Mane's going to countercharge itself anyways, so it's pretty solid. Countercharge, and if we hit a stat trigger here, then the White Mane column on the left actually hits 20k. We do see the heal though. Can't complain about the heal. But yeah, they heal too, so 1 for 1, nothing much. White Mane goes out. And yeah, one of the good things about the copy kind of mechanic in Murakumo is that you don't need to commit as much. Of course, it leaves you vulnerable in the game of 0 because, you know, one of your key ways of guarding is to have intercepts in your front row. But this deck doesn't really mind it that much because you kind of want to go to LB4 before you actually do a lot of stuff. But yeah, opponent's shown 3 crit triggers already, but first draw trigger here. So kind of interested in what the trigger lineup is. But here we see the stand trigger, SP Kaguru Bloom, by the way. And we're going to take our 4th damage here. It's a bit tight. They have the Silent Tom as well, which is a bit rough. But if we're playing against OTT, generally speaking, I do like going to the Shirayuki. Because, you know, you don't mind the Silent Tom as much. Here, is break riding that optimal? Not really, because we're already so much behind. Like, generally speaking, we do like to soak up damage, but we want to be pushing our opponent to be 3 or 4 already. And that's highly likely because we do have the copy abilities to actually commit and push damage early. But here we don't have the chance, so we're just going to call up the Hyakki Vogues. And this way we're just going to get, what, 4 attacks in. And if we see some stands, then that way we can see more. So put the generated copy, the spawn copy to the front row. The reason why we do that is actually because it bounces to the hand, right? So if we call it manually, it won't bounce back to the hand. So this way we're actually safely pocketing that Hyakki Vogue back to our hand. And we can always do it next turn. We have 1 Karen left open. If we take another damage, we have 2. A bit of a precarious situation here because we only have 1 intercept. The good thing about the OTT matchup is that OTT doesn't actually have any retires. So they do have to manually hit over the intercepts. And they did choose to play the crits instead of the stands. And so this way, you know, at 4 damage, even if they proc a crit, we will PG it. And the Tom isn't as effective. Here we have the Lozenji Mingus. Always a pain, you know, extra heal triggers are always nice. It's like this, we're guaranteed to be safe for this turn. We know that our opponent, 1 out of 2 cards in their hand is a Silent Tom. So we only need to, you know, assume that they only have 1 PG at most, unless they do hit a draw trigger. Or they do hit this check, then I guess they add that card to their hand. But yeah, we only don't know 1 of the cards in their hand, so pretty comfortable. They did hit the draw trigger, so now we don't know 2 cards in their hand. Haven't seen this PG yet, so it's been dangerous. But one of the situations is that here we do have multiple copies of the Hyakki Vogue. If we don't, we can always borrow card a Hyakki Vogue if we want to. And one interesting interaction is that we can borrow card something or copy something, and then if we lock it with Hyakki Vogue, we actually get to keep it because it loses the ability to remove itself from the at the end of the turn. Again, here, if you don't have 3 rearguards, you can choose your own Vanguard to get the extra plus 10k. But generally speaking, I like to put it to the rearguards because, we do play stand triggers. And if we hit a stand here, it would be really nice. We do see the heal though, which is alright. And one of the key things is, just the multi-attack aspect of Hyakki Vogue Reverse is just really strong. And it just call for game. And if your opponent hits a heal, we still have a 26k column. So the 10k attack, the plus 10k, the ability to attack from the back row is just really solid. And yeah, it's pretty decent. Of course, it's quite vulnerable. You have to be more risk taking to play this deck because you need to be comfortable not having multiple intercepts in the front row in order to make the most out of Hyakki Vogue. Assuming you don't commit that many unlockers and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, if you take the right risks, you will get rewarded, and you can see how the deck can push quite strongly even without the break ride. So the break ride's nice, but you don't really need it. Of course, the break ride does give your units the boost ability, which is really helpful. But even without it, you can still hit those numbers with the extra 10k. And if you hit your stand triggers, it's even more devastating. But we didn't see any stand triggers here. Maybe we will see some in the next game. So let's jump straight to the next game. So let's go to game 2 today. I didn't play this deck for 16 games in a row. I think I played half of it, like 5, 6, 7, or 8 games. But of course, I've been playing different variations. I've played 9 draws. I've tried crits. I've tried 9 stands. This deck doesn't really sustain itself well with 9 stands. Crits don't really synergize well with it because you want to take advantage of your copies and whatnot. And the crits can deny your unflip, your white means and whatnot. Again, here we don't really want to keep a heal trigger in our hand. We do have a grade 3 searcher to actually search us a grade 3. So we don't need to worry about grade stacks. Primarily hold on to your grade 1s and grade 2s. Here, you don't need multiple copies of the unlocker Metamorphox. 1 is more than enough most times. And if you're going first, you don't need to build up that center column power to actually reach your opponent's Vanguard that much. So putting it inside is generally speaking what works best for me. So we're seeing some Liberators with some Bruno, I believe that's the name. Not that popular of an option, but can scale up really, really well, especially early game with Escran. So definitely consider playing that if you're a Liberator player. I don't personally like it because I don't play 4 Escrads, but if you do play 3 or 4 Escrads, then I think it's definitely a choice that you can consider. Here hits the draw trigger with Garmor. Thinking. One of the things I like about Zero is that, well, if you're like stalling and you're like thinking, right? Like your opponent's time doesn't go into your time, right? In the TCG, if you're going in competitive play, it's like 20 minutes, 25 minutes, per round. And your opponent's thinking time, seeps into your own time, right? So you can call that stalling or whatever, but it does kind of suck at times. Here we draw into double white main. What that tells me is that we can be more greedy with the we can use our grade 3 searcher. We can also be more greedy and try to go for the rat plays. But we're just gonna go for Kokemaru, grade 3 searcher, play chill. Do we want the break ride? Yeah, I think the break ride is the ideal ride target. Here we can either we're building a 17k column. We don't see Hyakki yet, so we might not be using it. Of course, it means that we're 2 unlockers down, but again, like from the first game, you see that you don't really need the unlockers, but it definitely does help. But right now, I value being able to push for 2 damage more, because magic numbers are great. If I called it the 6k, then if they hit a trigger, then the attack might end right there. And playing catch up is not nice with Murakumo. You definitely do want to push and put some pressure. We're just gonna ride the break ride, and this turn we can use the rat to actually kind of generate columns here. With the skill, you get 3k on boost, so you can actually hit 20k with a 6k booster, which is really nice. I think it's solid. Million rat goes into million rat, goes into million rat. Big combo, Why use multi-card combos when you can use the 1-card combo? You also have the white mate that we have 2 copies of. helps us safely countercharge. Really solid. Here, I do know that I have the stand triggers, but you know, we only play 4 stands. We already have 1 in the Vanguard circle. Odds aren't that high. So I value the countercharge over the potential stand, especially since our ride target seems to be Shirayuki here, which does cost more counterblast because persona blasting each time costs counterblast 1. So it's important to kind of judge whether that opportunity for that stand trigger is worth it, or is the counterblast more valuable. And in this case, I chose the counterblast. And it's also why, you know, generally speaking, most decks play 9 draws. It's just that this deck, when you hit that stand trigger, it's just so big, especially with your big numbers and your you know 6, 7, you're upwards to 7 or 8 attack opportunities if you just sack those stands. Here, Superior Calling Zenith, putting us to 5. They whiffed that attack. But yeah, we're just gonna go Shirayuki here. The Blaster Blade stuff is kind of scary. The Zenith multi-attack is really scary. But Shirayuki does actually really help out in this matchup. You get the boosts with these copies, and of course Shirayuki can let you, you know, get a copy of itself. Don't really want to use it because Counterblast 2 is quite expensive, and we do have other intercepts to kind of use up right now. So build up your nice columns, you know, 16, 20, 21. Here we're making sure that the white main can hit. We're making sure that the white main can hit. Yes, thank you. And then we're going to swing with Vanguard. If we see a stand trigger, then that's really good. We can hit with a 26k column. Of course, we draw into the stand trigger. It's not really working out, you know, for me, but it is how it is. We have 2 intercepts here. We have 2 Shirayukis. We also have a PG, so we're really set defensively. Our opponent does have the Blaster Blade, which does let them retire 1 unit. If they call another one, they can retire both intercepts actually, because the Balon does give them the counter charge. But just go straight to battle. Gonna make use of that Zenith to return that trigger. But it's all good because Shirayuki actually helps us defend against these multi-attacks really well. Balon, Persona Blasting. Now it's -4. Won't hit. Won't hit. And we're going to PG that. Exactly what we need. So now, of course, the Break Ride is pretty useless as a rear guard, but it is still a body. And we're just going to swing. I think we have 1 stand trigger left. Of course, if we see it, it'd be nice. And we do. It's good. Build up that column just in case they hit that heal trigger with 23. 11k goes for lethal, and this is game. This is game. No, we're seeing a heal. We're seeing a heal. It's crazy, but we just sacked that stand. Very nice. If we didn't see that stand, we would have lost. So stand MVP here, and Kagura Bloom SP goes for the game. Hopefully not another heal. It's not. It's a Blaster Blade Spirit. Seems like an incomplete deck, but Liberators are really strong. And yeah, that's just how it functions. You know, game 1. You kind of see how Hyakki Vogue takes the offense. You know, if you really need to push, Hyakki Vogue is the way to go. If you know your opponent has a lot of multi-attack potential, if you need to just protect yourself and just get those extra turns in to actually set up your board, then Shirayuki is your way to go. Sometimes you don't get to pick. You know, for this game, for example, I didn't get to pick. I didn't just draw into any Hyakki Vogues, but it's still fine. You know, Shirayuki on the Break Rod, you get them as boost, pop them to your hand. Very useful. White main helps you countercharge, something that, you know, Murakumo really needed, and especially with Shirayuki being so counterblast heavy. So it's definitely really good. Definitely give this deck a try. Let me know down below what works for you, what doesn't. And you know, of course, personally speaking, I think that maybe the Magetsu build is still better. It's just easier to play. You just have more aggression overall with your ride chain doing stuff. But this deck is definitely kind of underrated. I think there's a lot of potential for this deck. But yeah, very offensive, very defensive. You can swing both ways you want. React to your opponent's play, and that's the ninja's way. Alright, so hope you enjoyed this deck profile. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe if you haven't already and want to see more. And that's all for today. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!